And us, we're having a great entrepreneurial conversation. Um, I hear Daniel is a person to talk to about how to build business capital. So um, I think on some level it starts as theft, but not sure. Or donations, involuntary donations. That's what we'll call it. My assistant just walked the opposite direction of the front of the building. All right, cool. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Last week, we talked through Psalms. We started our walk through the wisdom literature, and we said there's a psalm for every emotion. It's kind of different than where we are today in our worship services. But I do want to say, I think psalms are made to be more like songs that are sung, and they're the importance is the tool that we learned is to sing, to worship, regardless of the situation, even when we don't feel like it, even when it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and that God can handle our declarations of all kinds. And it's so important for us. Um, it's so important for us when we see a friend and we see other people in hard places. Maybe it's that season that we need to sing for them. Some seasons we don't feel like singing, and we should sing anyway. And some seasons we just can't find the words to sing, and we need someone else to carry the load for us. And so important to have that tool, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about wisdom literature as tools. Here she is. um, any guesses as to so one of the things that we do at our house? I don't know if I've mentioned this before. One of the things that we do at our house is we quote movies very often. And what I was just doing was a quote from Megamind that I only gave half the quote. It when he, if you've never seen the movie Megamind, this won't make any sense. But when the blue character wins and overthrows the good guy, he takes over City Hall and he shoots open this door, and his minion is carrying him. He says, "Here he is, Mister Evil Overlord." And anyway, so
I
I
was going to say Mrs.
anyway, so
Moving on. Well, I mean, it is. But it's probably not on back there.
it is on back there.
Check
Do you want
one,
to trade?
two.
I talk louder. Let's see if that works.
Can
See?
you hear him? But
Yeah,
yeah.
good times.
It's so weird how voices carry and don't carry.
I probably just need to turn up slider one, and I think there's a person who can help me with that in just a second. Anyway, sometimes we sing for ourselves, and sometimes um, we sing for others. Sometimes other people sing for us, and it helps us trust the story. That's what the Psalms do. Hey, will you turn up slider number one or the gain on it a little bit, please?
Is that you or me?
I believe that's me. So that's the Psalms. That's that tool of the wisdom literature. In Psalms,
Were you saying I missed the first? I was turning gym lights on. Um, why are you saying singing?
Psalms, they're songs. Thank you so much. That's perfect. They're songs.
Okay, got it.
And there's songs for every emotion, just like there's a
Right.
psalm for every emotion. And so it's important for us to sing, regardless of our emotion and situation, because sometimes it's for us and sometimes it's for other people. But we keep singing, and that helps us trust the story, which is the point of what God's called us to in the first place, right? That's why in our review, it sends us back to Genesis. Um, Today we're going to take a look at the book of Proverbs. We're going to narrow in on Proverbs chapter 10. There's 31 chapters. Great Are you just trading books, or are you trading seats? Or... All right.
You didn't like that one? All right. She didn't
Good
like
times. Book of Proverbs is where we're going to look today. Like I said, there's 31 chapters. We're going to focus on some pieces of chapter 10. Who is attributed for the writings of Psalms, of Proverbs?
I feel like Solomon.
Solomon is attributed for writing. How many of them did he write?
I have no idea.
We don't know.
Oh.
Most likely
So that's the right answer.
he actually compiled most of them.
Oh.
Or actually wrote them down. These wise sayings. And so if we're thinking of wisdom as a tool, thinking of the wisdom literature as tools, then Proverbs, we're going to refer to Proverbs as the tool of wisdom. And let's see, when you're thinking of Proverbs and the book of Proverbs, how would you, like, are they true all the time? Always true in every situation?
I don't know what you're asking. I don't think.
So if you read a proverb, say,
Is it always applicable?
is
Or
it
are you
always
asking about actual
is it always
truth?
true? So like the hand of the diligent is made to rule. Is that always true? Is it always true?
I have no. I was looking for phone a
Is
friend.
Is the person that is in charge? Is it always the person who works the hardest and earns that spot?
No, never. No, not never, but not
Never.
always. Not always.
Perspective.
Yeah, no, that's great. Uh-huh.
I mean, is it well, in your situation, you're gathering on an associate without saying too much. Anyway, I'm not saying her name. So you're bringing on an associate. This associate that you're taking on, is it the hardest working person? Person who has received their position because of relationship, right? Like it's not always. But that's what I'm saying. So do you want to restate what he's saying? So when we say, so there's so much to this. So when we refer to Proverbs and to wisdom, we're going to refer to them as wise sayings that are generally true. Wise sayings that are generally true. This is a good place because how many theological positions do you build off of the book of Proverbs?
I don't know. Not many. I can't.
Not
imagine.
many. Because theological foundations.
Can I have your book? Bible?
You want my Bible? Are you?
That's why I asked for it.
Wow. Theological foundations that we build, pillars that we build, we want them to be firm and true in all situations, something that we can build our life off of. Yes? Proverbs is going to have a lot of stuff that's going to help us, tools that help us, but they are not going to be firm foundations that are unchangeable. So, like, why don't you read Proverbs chapter 10, verse 4?
A slack hand causes poverty, but the hand of the diligent makes rich.
That's generally true, right? Slack hand causes poverty, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. You know any lazy, wealthy people? Anybody?
Well, a few. For example, the person.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point. I mean, generally, this is true. The people who are wealthy, they have worked hard. They've had a plan. They've had a target. They've continued to work and be consistent. That's not always true, but generally, it's a true statement. What about 10:4? 10:3. We just read 10
I
10:4.
just read 10:4. The
Chapter
Lord
10,
does
verse 3.
not let the righteous go hungry, but he thwarts the craving of the wicked.
What do you think? How does that one make you feel?
The Lord does not let the righteous go hungry, but he thwarts the craving of the wicked.
ESV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are parts of Proverbs that have there are parts of Proverbs that have a specific focus, especially like Psalm 31 is focused on the um, Proverbs 31 woman, the
Psalm
biblical wife.
31 is focused on that?
Proverbs 31.
Oh, you said Psalm 31.
Good times. Proverbs is where we're at. Proverbs 31, the Proverbs 31 woman, the biblical wife, all that stuff. So there are groups of Proverbs that are all focused on the same information and the same uh, theme. Generally speaking, there's big chunks of Proverbs that they don't. There's not a lot that overlaps. Um,
I always struggle reading through Proverbs because there's so many times that I'm like, that doesn't make sense together.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to read it as though it's one whole story. And
right. And the
doesn't work
important
that
part
way.
about a good exercise would be take a highlighter. Say you use a blue highlighter. It's okay to write in your Bible.
Mhm.
Start reading. Start reading at the beginning and start picking a theme. If wisdom is your desire, then highlight all of the proverbs that speak directly about wisdom, and highlight them all blue. And wealth and riches or poverty, highlight them yellow. And you can go through themes like that, and really find where they're pieced together all throughout. There's a lot of different themes that you can find in the book of Proverbs, um, but generally, what were we 10:3? Generally, we would say yes. God is going to take care of all of the needs, and the righteous is not going to go hungry. But is that true all of the time?
No.
I mean, aren't there people on earth
But
who are righteous people who are dying of hunger?
this version, the New King James says, the Lord will not allow the righteous soul to famish, but he casts away the desire of the wicked. Because he's always going to feed our soul,
Yeah.
even if we don't get food in our belly. So if you read it that way,
But he will reject and cast away the craving of the wicked.
right?
And that's what I'm saying. So generally, true. Right. What I'm saying is generally, these are true statements. Maybe, maybe not.
Only God knows. See?
Generally true.
You found that book, right?
I did. It's at our house. How about Proverbs 10:24?
What the wicked dreads will come upon him, but the desire of the righteous will be granted. Yeah, I don't know about that.
What about 10:30?
The righteous will never be removed, but the wicked will not dwell in the land. Why those specific ones? Why are you reading?
I was just in Proverbs 10. Thought I'd stick with ones that are close by, make it easier for us to study and see. I mean, they're wise. It's wisdom. We want to use wisdom as a tool to help us live a righteous life. This is a tool. Wisdom literature is a tool for us to use. Um, it's not built for us to make a bunch of theological statements. Even Psalm has a lot of good information. The Psalms have a lot of good things for us to dwell on and think on and reflect, to Selah, to pause and reflect. But there's songs for us to sing to encourage us further forward to trust the story. Proverbs, in the same way, teaching us to trust the Lord and trust in His provision and trust in who He is, and that the Bible is true. And so we don't make a lot of theological positions off of Proverbs, but we take the wisdom of pursuing after God, of being diligent people, and allow it to be generally true, but not something that we're going to stake our life on. What are you chuckling at me for?
No, it's not you. It's my own thought. Go ahead.
All right. So there's a lot of good stuff in Proverbs. I encourage you, the former district superintendent here in the Oklahoma district of the Assemblies of God, he encouraged ministers to read a proverb, a chapter in Proverbs, and a chapter in Acts every day. Become wise and learn how the early church lived. Another book that we're going to move on to, because I want to cover this before we get done here. Hopefully that helps us read Proverbs a little better and understand it and interact with it the way that God desires for us to put it together. Then there's another book that Solomon is accredited with writing, and it comes right after Proverbs. What is it?
Ecclesiastes.
You ever read Ecclesiastes? We're going to get to that, Song of Solomon. Ecclesiastes, a lot of people do attribute Ecclesiastes to Solomon. It is a very widely debated conversation.
The author?
The authorship of Ecclesiastes is widely debated. Matter of fact, there are many people who believe that the body of Ecclesiastes was gathered together, and then at a later date, the intro and the outro were added.
I was going to ask,
Go
why
ahead.
does it matter? Like, why did?
It's just a
No, I'm saying, like, why would it be hot? You said hotly debated. Like,
the authorship.
yeah. Why do people care so much?
If you wrote a book, would you care?
But Solomon's not here to argue his case, so why does it matter?
Well, so historians care.
I guess so.
They care about having accurate information. So the authorship of Ecclesiastes is one that is debated, and really what we learn in academia is if something can be debated, it will be.
Yeah.
If something can be argued for or against, it will be. And so, anyway, not that it's vital. So, how would you describe? Have you read Ecclesiastes? Does anybody just go, you know what? Today, I would just.
I'm just going to.
Where should I read? You know what? Ecclesiastes. That's where I want to go.
I don't ever.
No?
No.
No? Have anybody read Ecclesiastes recently? Other than just
Other
now?
than right this moment.
If you
No.
had to describe Ecclesiastes, how would you describe it?
The only thing I ever think of when I think of Ecclesiastes is the sun and time. There's nothing new under the sun, and time for everything.
Time for everything, time for mourning.
That's
time
what I
for
think
dancing, time for living.
That's not a descriptive.
It does. It is wisdom. It's in the wisdom literature. It reads quite a bit like Proverbs. Ecclesiastes has this refrain. It feels like I pursued after wisdom, sought it out, and all this thing, and then in the end, it was what?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Vanity. Vanity.
Oh,
it
yeah.
says it over and over
Oh,
again.
it does.
I
It starts with that.
pursued after personal pleasure, and in the end,
It
it
was
was
all
vanity. Vanity. It's all vanity. And you're like, I pursued after wisdom, and it's all vanity. And you're like, I just read Proverbs and all this wisdom literature, and now
Now you're telling me it's
vanity. Yeah, I'm not really. It didn't change anything. Vanity. It's all vanity. Wealth. I pursued after wealth and gathered all the things together, and in the end, it was vanity. It was all vanity. It was worthless.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know what? I should read more of that. Sign me up. It was crazy. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, so that's where like a lot of people. That's one of the debated points. And you get to the end of Ecclesiastes, and this is definitely a way to read it, and it's not wrong. You read all this stuff. It says it's vanity. It says wealth is vanity. It says that personal pleasure is vanity. It says that building houses and erecting monuments is vanity. That wisdom is vanity. And then at the end it says except. Got to the end, and I learned if the presence of God is in it, then it's meaningful. Then wisdom has meaning. Then pleasure has meaning. Then wealth has. Yeah. Man, I wish he had a microphone.
Hmm.
Yeah. To remind ourselves, yeah. And that's where like this a lot of people will teach on Ecclesiastes this statement. It's like everything is vanity apart from God. But with God, then wealth has meaning. Then the blessings of God have a purpose and a direction. And wisdom and the growth that we get personally, our um, our personal recognition and our careers and the things that we do, they're meaningful as an expression of our relationship with God. But if we're pursuing them after them all on our own, at some point, I worked at UPS for several years, and we went through two different buyouts in the back end of contracts, and they were downsizing people, they were downsizing our management staff. So they made a uh, separation, but that's not what they call it. Anyway, they made an offer to people, and they're like, "This is what we'll pay you. We'll take care of a severance." Yeah, made a severance offer to them, and they were like, they had to make a decision, and basically it was you can be reassigned and learn a new job and move places, or if you want to stay living here where you are, where your family is, you're going to take. So most of them, it was like 6 to 9 months worth of salary as a severance, and uh, the ability to roll over and get matching 401k stuff for all of that. all of that time, and it's like, wow, those last 22 years were really meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there were people who had been there 30 plus years that their severance option was 8 months worth of pay, and they weren't ready to retire, but they've got kids and grandkids that live in the area, and they're like, I can't at this point in my life just uproot and leave. And most of them, they gave them the option to go to preload, which is
The worst.
2 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock in the morning, supposedly, but it's really like noon to 1 or midnight to 1 p.m. And they're like, I'm too old for that. I had to go find a new job, new career at 60.
So stupid. Why were you saying that?
But Ecclesiastes, that's the, if our pursuit is just that and God's separated from it, it's easy to go, well, it was all worthless. It was all vanity. It didn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Or God's at the center of it. You've been 30 years somewhere and you've been thinking about what's the next move. And then, hey, we're offering you a severance. Well, I've got time to think about where to go next and what God wants to do next. This chapter's over. I did that for a while. I was doing pretty good at a car dealership. Was managing a department and wrestling with the should I felt like I was supposed to get my stuff in order, be ready to do ministry, whatever full time looks like. Anyway, and get my credentials and stuff put together. And I would have had to ask for the first Saturday of the month off, just the morning of the first Saturday of the month off. And I
But
wasn't.
that's like peaks.
Yeah,
Peak season.
everybody is
every
there
month.
on Saturdays,
Yeah.
and so
Especially the first Saturday.
I was unwilling to do that, and I had walked away before from like a $30,000 a year job at the time, and this has been years ago, and I was making much more than that, and I said, I've got a $30,000 a year faith, but I'm not sure I have fill in the number faith, and
And the Lord said, hold.
so
Hold
God
on.
was like, "Don't worry, I got you," and go to pick up the monthly report for me and all of the team of guys that I'm responsible for. And like, hey, where's our report? And I was told, general manager wants to meet you and your guys at 1 o'clock. For what? He wants to talk with you guys about. And I was like, huh. So I talked with the other guys, and me and my assistant, we went and got our paperwork from our controller and the payroll lady to make sure we had all the stuff that we needed for the meeting we assumed was about to happen. And they come into this 1 o'clock meeting and looked at me and all the guys that were working for me and said, "You guys are all stealing money from us.
You're all making too much.
You guys are making too much money, and so we're going to pay you last month like we had been, but moving forward, this is what it's going to look like." And the 4 guys in my department, we're all going to have to split money. So it's like I was going to make 25% of what I was making to do the exact same thing. And I was like, well,
Looks like I got my faith back.
I can do that. I can walk away from that, being called a liar and a thief. And they were shocked that we all went home after that.
I asked him, I said, well, if you guys aren't making the money, then where does it go to?
No,
and
it's his.
It goes directly to the general manager, which he ended up getting fired later on because he was not channeling the money correctly.
Yeah. So anyway, it was like.
I mean, it came back to bite him, but the Lord uses all things to speak to your heart.
So
that was a fun time.
Wisdom, God can get your attention. So if He's giving you any insight, probably listen before it costly, right. Before it's more costly. But most people would describe Ecclesiastes through vanity, but in the end, God gives it purpose. I do want to read a little passage out of it, if you would. Ecclesiastes chapter 7. We're going to read verses 1 through 5.
A good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of birth.
Okay. So it starts out we're pretty good here, right? A good name is better than precious perfume. I guess I should let you finish the rest of it, but good name better than precious perfume. That's pretty good. But then it carries on. So start after perfume. And the day of one's death
And
better
the day of death than the day of birth.
Okay. Keep going. To verse 5. All the way to verse 5.
That's what I was going to do before, and you just
go ahead.
Verse 2, it is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting. For this is the end of all mankind, and the living will lay it to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by sadness of face the heart is made glad. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. It is better for a man to hear the rebuke of the wise than to hear the song of fools.
What you think?
That's depressing. I don't like that.
Anybody? It's like, you know what? I'll take a double portion of that. Thank you.
Well, why does he say that?
Huh. It's a great question. The day of one's death is better than the day of one's birth.
I think it depends on who you're asking.
It's better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting.
I don't think that one depends on who you're asking.
I mean, I think when we really look at it, the value of life and the value of people, the party ends at some point, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And what comes from the party? Who wants to show up at the party? Or are you rolling your eyes at me?
No, I'm thinking. I don't know what party you're talking about.
If somebody has a house party and tells everybody about it, who wants to show up?
Well, everybody.
All right. If someone is having a memorial service, same person, same house, having a memorial service, how many people are showing up?
Yeah, I guess people that cared.
Which one's more meaningful to the person? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, really, yeah. They want all the people who are going to show up to the party. But is it more valuable for us to be there in mourning than it is in celebration?
Well, for sure. The only thing that goes through my mind is, at least if I'm at the party, then I'm with the people. But if they're mourning me, then I'm not there.
So
it's like,
I'll talk about
for
a term.
me individually.
There's a Jewish term, sitting Shiva. We don't do this enough. Probably a good thing for us to practice. When we sit Shiva, we sit with someone. If a person is mourning and they're in hardship or have loss, there's a Jewish tradition that they would go to that person's home and they would sit Shiva. What that means is they're going to sit down and not say a word. They're just going to be there.
Okay, so let me just clarify this real quick, even in my own brain. Mourning doesn't necessarily have to mean death. It can just mean hardship.
Right. Loss, hardship. Like, don't people mourn when they lose their job?
Right.
Do they mourn when their kids go wayward?
Yeah. Well, so I just needed some clarification, because immediately I'm just like, okay, well, this is the absolute of.
It doesn't
it's
say
awake,
it's better
so
to
it's
go
not,
to the house of death. It doesn't say death.
No, it said mourning, but I just needed some clarification out loud. I had to process it. So that makes a lot more sense.
So they would sit Shiva. They would go to this house, whoever's house, people that were in mourning, and they would just sit. And the people who are in mourning, if they start talking, you have a conversation with them. If they don't talk, you sit there and don't talk. You're not telling them about your day. You're not telling them how things are going unless they ask. Because the whole point of being there isn't you.
Right.
It's them. Isn't this the call of the gospel? This is the call of even the Old Testament. To be there, to be different from other people. Everybody wants to show up to the party. We don't spend enough time honoring the lives of people who are gone. We don't spend enough time mourning and remaining with people, I don't think. I mean, how many times does somebody go through a surgery and people set up a meal train for a week or 2 weeks, and then what happens when that's over?
They check their box and move on with life. Yeah.
And so Ecclesiastes says that it's better to spend time in that house of mourning with those people and understanding purpose, understanding and having purpose. Because it says that a person should ponder this. It says, for that is the end of every man, and the living will take it to heart and solemnly ponder its meaning. Like, when are we most aware of, I'm doing the things that are important and meaningful more than when we're in the house of sorrow, house of mourning, when we're sitting and all the other distractions are quieted and our mortality staring us dead in the face?
Yeah, I definitely see there's more clarity.
And so this is in the middle of this big refrain, and chapter 6 and 7 are actually written as one whole refrain. And so chapter 7, verses 1 through 5 is right in the middle of it. And it'll change the way that we look at it. But it is this call to purpose that Ecclesiastes continually calls us to. And it challenges us to go, hey, instead of pursuing after all of the party and all of the position and all of the celebration and all of the personal pleasure, if we'll stop and understand that those things are going to leave us empty if we don't have God in the middle of them, and if we will take to heart this wisdom of recognizing that God has us here for a purpose, and that purpose isn't us, it's others. It's making a difference in other people's lives. It's making a difference in making an impact in the world. And so when we remember where we came from and we know where this is all going to end, we can live on purpose. Yep. So we're going to have more conversation about that, and maybe some additional conversations about entrepreneurship in life. But thanks for joining us. Like I said, we're going to have more conversation about that. But so Proverbs, we're going to talk about it as the tool of wisdom, and they're wise sayings that are generally true. And when we talk about the book of Ecclesiastes and we read through the book of Ecclesiastes, it's calling us to live with purpose and to live on purpose. And so we're going to talk about that tool as purpose. So as we gain wisdom and we continue to walk through the wisdom literature, there are more tools for us to live a godly life with. So